I'm thinking it's going to have to start with an exorcism.
Oh
Exorcism.
my God.
It's
Dang.
Roman,
You think she
there's a lot of-
possessed?
What y'all think?
I don't think exorcism. I don't think an exorcism is needed.
I thought maybe a benefit concert. But
start.
I also talked.
Donation, definitely. Donation.
Of
That's
course,
always thought
you
with the
have
donation.
to. Yeah, that's the foundation of the start. And then you guys sit down.
And then you guys said 30 seconds just detonated a billion-dollar brand. Everyone thought Nicki Minaj was stepping into power beside Donald Trump until the image flipped and started reading like leverage lost in real time. What is spreading now is not applause, but a clip, a roast, and a room laughing louder than the stage ever did, insiders say, as the narrative hardens around her before any explanation lands. On January 28th, she stands at a Treasury summit, calls herself the president's #1 music fan, holds his hand for roughly 30 seconds, commits hundreds of thousands to Trump accounts seeded with $1,000 per newborn, and accepts a kiss on the cheek under flashing cameras. Days later, a Grammy Awards audience applauds her absence, while Trevor Noah jokes she is still at the White House. If this is influence, why does it look like exile? And why music? Does silence from power feel louder than support? The correction has already begun, and it is not coming from politics.
But
I hope she knows what she's doing.
I do too.
Because she's turning a lot of people against her. And I hope it's for a reason that she really feels for and not just doing it for press or not doing it for any other reason. Because I see a lot of the barbs really turning on her.
Yeah. Well, we've always seen Nicki march to the beat of her own drum. So, I mean, I feel like she knows what she's doing. That don't make it right, but I feel like she knows exactly what she's doing.
That correction begins inside the room, not outside it. January 28th, 2026. Andrew W. Mellon Auditorium, Treasury Department Summit. Cameras are rolling. Kevin O'Leary is speaking, and she is standing there, fingers interlocked with the president for roughly 30 seconds while he jokes about her nails. The official framing is clean. New investment accounts for newborns, seeded with $1,000 in federal funding, financial literacy, hope. She steps up and says she is probably the president's #1 fan, and the room music claps on cue. She commits hundreds of thousands to the so-called Trump accounts tied to her fan families. On paper, it reads philanthropic, strategic, music future-facing. But people close to major labels say the optics feel less like generosity and more like alignment inked in permanent marker because this is not a tweet. This is money, stage time, physical proximity, and a public declaration of loyalty in a year where loyalty costs. And when you replay the footage without the applause track, the balance of power in that handshake starts to look uneven.
I mean, you got to just realize what's going to happen here. Is Jay-Z going to do anything to Nicki Minaj? She's making it very clear on what he was just coming out with. So this is the part that you got to watch very closely on how Trump's handled this. Now, don't get me wrong. We've seen the clips that there was a relationship, that they would talk and the exchange and all this other stuff. Yes, we've seen.
The surface explanation arrives quickly. She says she is moved by religious freedom and by the way Trump is treated, describing bullying during the 2024 campaign. She frames it as empathy, as recognition, as a mirror of her own battles. On the Katie Miller podcast, she speaks about always sensing a second job waiting for her, something beyond music rap, something political. That narrative lands like destiny, not opportunism. But here is where it bends. Music industry insiders point out that empathy does not require a 30-second handhold under federal seals. Empathy does not require calling yourself the president's #1 fan in front of cameras. And destiny rarely comes with a kiss on the cheek and a joke about manicures. The distance music between spiritual calling and staged alignment is small on paper, enormous in practice. When you layer in the financial commitment and the optics of the summit, the move stops feeling emotional and starts feeling transactional, and transactions raise a different set of questions about who is buying what. The build-up to that stage appearance music is not random. Last fall in New York, she sits at dinner with Alex Bruzewitz, a 28-year-old social media operative advising Trump, alongside her pastor, Peter Zadonu, author of a book about confronting fear. They discuss violence against Christians in Nigeria. She later walks into the United Nations with Bruzewitz after an introduction from Ambassador Mike Waltz. Paparazzi capture the fur coat, the suit, the controlled entrance. She appears at Turning Point USA's America Fest. J.D. Vance calls her comments really profound. That is not a casual drift into politics. That is a corridor being built step by step. People in political consulting circles say that when an artist crosses that many thresholds in public, the alliance is deliberate, not impulsive. So when the Treasury Summit lands in January, it is not a surprise move. It is the apex, and apex moments are rarely reversible. The narrative from her side leans heavily on persecution. Bruesewitz openly compares how certain media outlets treat her to how they treat Trump. He brings up that she has never won a Grammy. Outsider, music target misunderstood. That framing resonates with fans who see her as a fighter. But then the Grammys happen without her and the room reacts in a way that rattles the script. Trevor Noah references her absence and the audience laughs hard. Then applauds. Not outrage, not protest, applause. That reaction circulates across platforms within hours. Music, industry sources say the sound of that applause is what unsettles executives more than the joke itself. Music, because laughter can be absorbed. Applause at absence signals something colder. Relief. If the persecution narrative is meant to cast her as an embattled hero. Music, the public response starts to read like detachment. And detachment is harder to spin than hostility.
Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country. I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rules, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented. And so she has shown her disdain for Africans.
Here is where the optics sharpen further. The Treasury event is not just symbolic. It involves policy branding. Trump accounts seeded with $1,000 per newborn tied to federal backing. Her endorsement is not a quiet endorsement. Music, it is staged, photographed, and clipped for redistribution. She urges fans to defend him against smear campaigns, positioning herself as both shield and amplifier. People in Washington say this is exactly how cultural capital gets converted into political messaging. Celebrity validation equals youth reach. But there is no visible reciprocation beyond praise and stage time. No policy advisory role announced, no formal appointment, no structural leverage, just applause and a viral clip. That imbalance is what insiders circle in red. Music in high-level political rooms, proximity without portfolio is decoration. And decoration can be moved or replaced without music consequence.
And you're not going to go sue everybody that's going to do whatever they're going to say. Nicki Minaj is not nobody. If Nicki Minaj tweets something like this and Jay-Z doesn't sue, well, it's very different than what...
Meanwhile, the comedian Katt Williams steps in with surgical timing. He does not rage. He does not attack her catalog. He reframes the image, observational, almost detached. The effect is immediate. What was framed as access begins circulating as confusion. What was meant to signal influence starts reading as miscalculation. Cultural commentators say this is the inflection point. Once the moment becomes funny, it stops being formidable. Power depends on gravity. Gravity evaporates under music laughter. And unlike policy debates, jokes are repeatable. They loop, they stick. The more the clip circulates, the less room there is for nuance. People close to her camp insist music. She expected backlash and remains unmoved. But silence from the political side grows noticeable. No follow-up spotlight, no expanded role. Just the initial event and then a shift of attention elsewhere.
Do you know what happened when I came here?
You have to go inside.
Huh? What you said?
Can you please stop filming? Please just step in the car first.
No, I need a lawyer.
The money lingers in the background like a receipt nobody wants to analyze out loud. Hundreds of thousands pledged toward accounts branded with his name, directed at her fans' families. Music financial literacy is the headline, but industry accountants whisper about optics versus return. What does she gain in measurable leverage from this level of public investment? Endorsements in other lanes tighten when political alignment hardens. Touring markets shift. Brand partners recalibrate risk assessments. None of that is theoretical. It is standard practice in entertainment contracts. Yet she doubles down publicly, saying the hate motivates her to support him more. That defiance reads strong to loyalists. But music executives hear a different tone, escalation without visible gain. When loyalty becomes identity, exit options shrink. Music and this alignment is not framed as temporary. It is framed as devotion. Apparently, Nicki Minaj has dragged Jay-Z through the mud, blasting him as evil and spiteful. Then there is the history she carries into this room. Years of public feuds, high-profile clashes, survival through cultural storms. She is accustomed music to facing opponents head-on, responding in lyrics, interviews, social media bursts. Those battles operate on direct confrontation. This one does music, not. Political machinery does not clap back. It absorbs and moves on. Comedy does not argue. It distills. That difference shifts the terrain beneath her. People close to rival camps quietly note that in rap disputes she controls the narrative through force of personality. Here, narrative control slips the second the handshake loops without her caption. And when a Grammy Awards audience applauds her absence, it signals that industry neutrality is not guaranteed. It is conditional on alignment, conditional on comfort, conditional on calculation. All of this unfolds while she continues presenting the move as moral clarity. Religious freedom, defense against smear campaigns, a belief that God is protecting him. The conviction sounds unwavering, but observers inside both entertainment and political spaces keep circling the same tension. If this is strategic, where is music, the leverage? If this is spiritual, why does it mirror campaign optics so precisely? And if this is personal conviction, why does the political apparatus offer stage time but no structural power? Music, the handhold lasts 30 seconds. The internet lasts forever. As the clip continues to circulate and the laughter continues to echo, the imbalance between celebrity confidence and political calculation grows harder to ignore. And the more that imbalance shows, the louder one question becomes: who walked away from that stage holding real power? And who just lent theirs to the frame? Once that question starts circulating, older footage begins resurfacing with new weight. Clips from years ago where she criticizes Donald Trump's behavior toward women get reposted alongside her current praise. An emotional social media post from 2018, where she calls family separations at the border so scary, suddenly lives next to her more recent alignment. Industry watchers do not frame this as hypocrisy. They frame it as evolution under pressure. They point to 2021, when she ignites national headlines with vaccine commentary that pulls her into political crossfire and draws attention from health officials and cable panels alike. That moment shifts her from pop star to lightning rod. From there, insiders' music say the jump into explicit political affiliation stops looking like a leap and starts looking like a continuation. Once you are already in the storm, choosing a music side can feel safer than floating between them. But choosing a side at this scale rewrites every music past statement. It turns growth into contradiction, and contradiction is oxygen for critics who were waiting. The outsider narrative intensifies in private circles. Brucewitz's comparison between her and Trump as figures treated unfairly by outlets like the New York Times and CNN is not random rhetoric. It is strategic branding. Being framed as a persecuted genius binds fan loyalty tighter. The Grammy history feeds that storyline. Never winning one becomes not just a statistic but a symbol. People close to her camp insist that being overlooked by award institutions hardens her against industry opinion and makes political alignment feel like music vindication. But when you position yourself as misunderstood by the mainstream and then stand beside a president who also claims persecution, the optics fuse. Two grievance narratives merge into one image. That fusion can energize a base, but music, it also narrows the lane. Major brands monitor public perception like currency markets. Music, once the perception shifts from rebellious independence to ideological certainty, endorsements and partnerships enter recalculation mode. No contracts need to be canceled for pressure to mount. Hesitation alone carries financial weight.
Apparently, Nicki Minaj has dragged Jay-Z to filth. She blasts him for being evil and spiteful.
Meanwhile, the comedy angle does not fade. Katt Williams' calm reframing lingers because it does not attack her art or success. It questions her assumption. Cultural commentators say that is why it sticks. It implies that the most dangerous misstep is not disagreement, but misreading hierarchy. When the roast circulates, It pairs effortlessly with her second job statement about always sensing a political destiny. That combination creates a narrative critics latch onto. Destiny or delusion? She presents conviction. Detractors present overreach. The contrast sharpens because she is not quietly supporting policy from the sidelines. She is visibly stepping into proximity. And in spaces where power is measured by who can move policy, not who can trend, the difference matters. The laughter does not need to be unanimous to be effective. It only needs to be repeatable, and repetition reshapes memory faster than clarification. The broader industry context adds another layer. Rap culture has long flirted with Donald Trump's image, from lyrical name drops celebrating wealth to high-profile endorsements during previous campaigns. Kanye West and Lil Wayne both received attention for their proximity, and both experienced backlash and headlines in equal measure. That precedent hovers over her move, whether acknowledged or not. But she is not aligning as a symbolic supporter. She is presenting herself as an advocate tied to specific initiatives and values. That is a heavier lift. People inside major labels say there is a difference between posing for a photo and tying your personal brand to a policy ecosystem. Once that tie is public, it becomes a lens through which every future project is viewed. Tour stops, festival bookings, and international markets all carry political climates of their own. None of this guarantees collapse, but it guarantees friction. And friction in global entertainment translates into negotiations that are suddenly less straightforward. At the same time, her supporters frame the backlash as proof of courage. They argue that the louder the criticism, the more necessary her stance becomes. That dynamic is familiar in polarized spaces. Opposition reinforces identity. But there is a quiet risk embedded in that logic. If every criticism becomes validation, recalibration becomes impossible. People close to former collaborators whisper that some industry relationships cool not because of ideology alone, but because unpredictability complicates business planning. When a brand can pivot from pop culture to a political rally without warning, corporate partners tighten clauses and lawyers revise language. It is not about agreement. It is about risk management. And risk management has little patience for volatility. She has survived volatility before, but this version intersects with federal policy branding and national headlines. That raises the stakes beyond music charts and streaming numbers. Her spiritual framing also complicates the calculus. Invoking faith and divine protection elevates the alignment beyond strategy. It transforms it into mission. When she says God is protecting him, she signals that the partnership operates on moral ground, not just political convenience. That framing makes criticism feel like an attack on belief, not just opinion. Insiders say this shields her psychologically from backlash, but it also deepens division. Because once alignment is cast as righteous, compromise starts to look like betrayal. And in a landscape where compromise keeps doors open, narrowing the moral field can isolate. The industry does not reward isolation indefinitely. It tolerates it when profitability outweighs controversy, but profitability fluctuates. And when it does, alliances are reassessed with colder math than any stage speech suggests. The international dimension hovers quietly as well. Her roots in Trinidad and Tobago, her public discussions about Nigeria, and her references to religious persecution abroad all expand the narrative beyond domestic politics. That global framing can be powerful, positioning her as an advocate for communities beyond the United States. Yet it also exposes her to scrutiny from audiences who interpret American political alignment differently. Cultural capital does not travel uniformly. What energizes one base can alienate another. And in a streaming era where revenue is global, perception shifts ripple outward. Industry analysts note that once an artist becomes identified with a specific political figure, international press begins framing interviews through that lens. Questions change. Headlines change. The art competes with ideology for oxygen, and that competition rarely benefits the art in the long run. Inside Washington, the calculus remains clinical. Political strategists are accustomed to leveraging celebrity appearances for amplification. They are less accustomed to granting structural influence in return. Photo opportunities, summit speeches, and podcast interviews are accessible. Advisory roles, policy drafting, and sustained consultation are far rarer. So far, there is no sign of formal authority attached to her alignment. No appointment, no task force leadership, no legislative imprint bearing her name. That absence does not mean it will never come. But in the present moment, it underscores the imbalance critics highlight. If the exchange is visibility for validation, the scale tilts toward the institution with enduring power. And institutions outlast cultural cycles. They absorb them. The tension now sits at an uncomfortable crossroads. She stands firm publicly, amplifying support and dismissing backlash. The music industry recalibrates quietly, measuring cost against loyalty. Political operatives continue their campaigns with or without her trending. Comedy continues recycling the image, and fans split into camps arguing not just about policy, but about identity. Is she redefining what a rap icon can be, or misjudging the machinery she has stepped into? Is this a calculated reinvention, or a high-stakes gamble fueled by grievance and conviction? Leave your thoughts and theories in the comments. Pick a side, because if this is strategy, the next move has to show leverage. And if it is belief, the cost is only beginning to surface. We are watching it unfold.